Hi guys, this is the next video in your categories workshop in Excel, and in this one I will show you how to create a pie chart out of the categorical data that we have in these frequency tables here. Now there's two different things that we can do. Obviously what this shows is we have the answers of people to the question about their dietary preferences, A being no preference, B being vegetarian, etc. And then how many times each of these categories was chosen. Now, a pie chart, which is one of the graphs we can make from this, basically shows shows us the different frequencies for the different categories in relation to each other. So as a proportion of the total number of people you asked, how many were choosing this option. So it gives you the idea of a percentage or a proportion out of the total of a variable. Whereas a bar chart shows you the absolute frequency. So how many times did each of these get chosen, not as a part of the total, but as an absolute value, essentially. So those are the two things you can make, a pie chart or a bar chart. Now in this case, because we want to know what the frequencies look like in relation to one another, we're going to create a pie chart. Now in order to do this, you highlight the data that you want to insert. In this case, we want to name the categories A, B, C, D, E, F, and we also need to know how many times each was chosen. So we need to highlight all of these cells of data. We then go into insert, and then we go into the pie charts, which is one of these chart options here. Now if the option that you want is not one of these here, then there's always more options if you go into see all charts. Okay, so these are all of the ones that Excel is capable of making. I do not recommend that you look at the recommended charts because most of the time Excel doesn't actually recommend the correct chart for you. Okay, so you should know which chart you want to make and then select it from the options. In this case, we create a pie chart. There are several different options here, and in a scientific write-up, it's always important that you use the simplest possible form. Okay, so even though the 3D pie chart looks nice, it's not very scientific because it has redundant information in it that doesn't actually help the reader understand the data, it just makes it look nicer. And that is not helpful. Okay, so in this case, we use the 2D pie chart, we click on it, and then it creates it automatically here. So now we can see out of the total, which is the whole pie, how many have chosen each of the options, which is represented by the size of the wedge. Okay, we can see that almost 3/4 of people have chosen A, which is no dietary preference. Now at the moment, the legend, which basically gives us to the color of the wedge, the name of the category as it was chosen, is in A, B, C, D, E, F, which wouldn't really tell anyone anything if they hadn't actually collected the data. So in order to make that clearer, we should actually replace the letters that we gave people to choose with what they actually stand for. Okay, so this is just a label. A, B, C, D, E, F are labels. And the values that we have behind them, so what they actually stand for, are the different dietary preferences. Now, the nice thing in Excel is that whatever you create, a graph or a formula, is created from the cell, and whatever is in the cell is used in that graph or in that formula. So if you change what's in the cell, it's automatically changed in what you've created. So if I change this here now to no preference, it will change it on your graph. Okay, so I can do that with all of these according to the different options that we've given people. And if I remember rightly, it was like this. Then the legend will be adjusted automatically. Okay, so now this is a nice graph that we can use. One thing to take to bear in mind, and this graph now would have to be given a caption to explain to people what it actually shows. Okay, so now someone who's not familiar with the data that you've collected still wouldn't know really what this is. They could probably guess from the legend that it's something about dietary preferences, but you would have to explain in a caption that you asked 159 people, which is the total, about their dietary preferences, and you gave them these options, and this is the result. Okay, so you'd create a caption with this in a write-up. Now, one problem with pie charts is that Excel does not necessarily automatically know what is supposed to be the legend and what is supposed to be the values that go in the pie when you have numbers for each. Okay, so in this case, we have the options that people chose on a scale of 1 to 7, what's your opinion? And we have the frequencies right here. If I create a pie chart with this, Excel will not automatically know whether I want to put these ones in here or these ones. So I can show you how that works and it will do it wrong. Okay, so as you can see, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So basically Excel has now thought that these are the frequencies and not these. It's completely ignored whatever is in this right here. So it gets confused if basically the legend that you've created is in numbers rather than words. So what we can do to change that is to create, to change these into the actual, what they actually stand for. So change the labels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on into the actual value behind them. Okay, so what we want to say here is that this was strongly disagree, and this was disagree, and so on. Okay, so I'm just going to put some random letters in this. You can finish this off properly, but if I make a pie chart now, same way as I did before, it creates it correctly. Okay, strongly disagree was never chosen, so it is not represented here. Okay, and that's how it should be. So if you finish these off, then that's basically you done for this part of the workshop. Think about making a caption for these as well, and you can ask for a good example, and there should be one in your lecture about this as well. And then if you still have time, please go on to complete the should section as well, which will give you some further little functions in Excel.